All right, good afternoon, everyone. Is it afternoon yet? Not yet. Good morning, everyone. The Finance Committee has 4 action items today. Vice President Ryan Rapp will provide a brief overview, and each chancellor will present their respective. Yes. Each chancellor will present their respective campus preliminary 5-year capital plan. Upon conclusion of each campus presentation, we'll vote on the campus preliminary 5-year plan. And just for the board here, most of the materials that you're going to see being on the capital plans for each of the campus, you've already approved. So they are still going to be clicked through for a little bit of a refresh. And we're going to focus most of the time on anything that's new, just so that you are fully aware. I just didn't want you to go, but didn't we already go through this? The answer is yes, you've gone through and seen most of it, but there are a few new items that have been added. So with no further ado, Ryan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Curator Burnsick. As you noted, I just want to remind the board before we have the campuses get started. We started with a new process. This is just preliminary approval, or what we've termed Gate A approval. You'll see many of these projects were on the plan. The details around these projects are in the materials. The chancellors do have short slides to brief you on those. I really think it's more of an opportunity for the board, before we move forward with further planning, to ask questions about any of these projects that they might have. If you don't have any questions, then I think very quickly you could move to approve the projects moving forward. I want to be clear, we're not asking you to move forward with letting us build these projects. It's just that we would then do further planning and bring a final plan back to you in the spring.
We're not asking for funding, right,
Yes.
Ryan? We're
Yeah.
saying that we will agree with the chancellors and the campus's recommendations regarding what the top priorities are.
Yes, and that
for
it fits with the mission, and that in terms of stewardship. I will just briefly state, I touched on it yesterday, one of the things that we will want to talk about in the spring in terms of is all, in addition to capital, is space utilization. I think that's going to be really critical, and one of the things I do think we have to start thinking about is our square footage. So when we add a new building, what are we doing with the other square footage we have? And that's going to be something that we can dive into this spring, but I just want to highlight that as you think about these projects and you see that we're talking about new projects, we're also thinking about how we think about our overall footprint. With that, I'll have Chancellor Maples come up and present Missouri S&T's plan.
Thank you, Ryan. I want to read through all of this for the committee. No, just
Good thing we started early.
soon off we go. Off we go. I want to update you on one and talk about a new one, basically. The update one is the Shrink Hall Addition and Renovation Phase 3. And the reason it's an update is because you will recall that yesterday you approved some addition for classroom space. What we did was we pulled the classroom space that we were planning for part of Shrink out of Shrink and moved it into a place where it's more central to campus, and because we really need it now. And so we are going forward with that. It's going to be funded without a capital appropriation, and it will continue to allow us to teach more students and to get them through, and I hope will help us with our graduation rate. And I will tell you that the Phase 3 is now down to a $44.6 million project. It was pushing about $54 million when we had come through before, and that's in large part because we have pulled out those classrooms. So. Library Learning Commons renovation, we are moving forward on that. We have already funded, as it turns out, electronic key access and 24/7 student access. The students are thrilled with this, and in fact, the only student complaints I've gotten so far is from recent graduates who were saying that they really, really wish we had done this sooner. Engineering and Research Laboratory Addition and Renovation. This is a premier research complex. This would be the first research-only space ever built on the S&T campus. We have never actually done that. In terms of space, we've done some research labs in some buildings, but they've been part of teaching and other office space and other building components. The new one that you will see here is McNutt Hall Edition, which has Missouri S&T's glass-blowing metalworking laboratories. And this is actually going to combine research, experiential learning, art, and science. It's a really interesting combination of the kinds of things that go on. We have a niche in glass and the kinds of things that are done with glass. Unlike almost anywhere else in the country. You have to go to Corning, New York to come up with anything close to what we do. I'm done.
Wow. Does anyone have any questions for Chancellor Maples?
Only appreciation.
Only appreciation. Well, then, if there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to recommend and approve the further planning and development of the Missouri S&T projects presented today and is outlined in the board materials?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. I don't think we can take a vote, but
We don't need full board,
we don't
no,
need-
just committee.
awesome. Next. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. We look forward to all of these wonderful projects. Who
Us
is
too.
next
Thank
up at bat? All right.
Yeah, Curator Burnsick,
What's that?
yeah, you need,
Oh, do I need a vote? I'm sorry.
just the
all-
committee.
Just for the, look, I don't have anybody, there's no grown-ups in the room. So I don't know what I'm doing. It looks like we need to take a verbal vote of those on the committee. So those on the Finance Committee, if you're in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion's carried. Chancellor George.
All right, well, thank you very much, and I will try to be very brief as well. I do want to remind the board that we have just completed about $150 million of new stuff, 4 buildings, redoing the roads. So that's the glamorous stuff. So what I've got here for you is the real unglamorous stuff, going inside the buildings, doing M&R and renovation, maintenance and repair, and so forth. So just to keep in mind that we've kind of done a real facelift on the campus recently. Our first project here is space consolidation and infrastructure. I'm not going to read everything here, but just say that it affects the school social work. We'd move them out of a building, take that building down. We'd take the Department of Music, move them over near where the Performing Arts Center is, which makes sense that they should be near the Performing Arts Center. The driver in all this is to reduce our facilities condition needs index. It's too high, and we want to get it down. Lower is good with that particular index. And this will certainly, as you can see from those figures, help us in that. We've already begun doing some work on this project now, masonry and things of this sort, and so we're hoping to get some help from the system in this project. Social science building renovation. This would renovate about 144,000 gross square feet. I should point out that we have indicated no private funds raised on any of these 3 projects, but I do want to mention that some of the renovation we're doing right now in Benton Hall, we are getting $1 million donation from Monsanto, now Bayer. We haven't announced that publicly, so you can get money for renovation if you try, but it's a hard sell to donors. And we'll be doing this on the North Campus. And then the last thing I'll mention is Stadler Hall renovation. Our science complex, we just completed in the last 2 years a new science building. We're taking it out of our hide, making bond payments from our operating costs. And then for the remaining buildings that are associated with the science complex, we're going in and doing renovation, maintenance, and repair. And Stadler Hall would be near the end of that, and that'd be about 82,000 square feet. And that's for our departments, biology, psychological sciences, and physics and astronomy. That's it. I presented these 3 to you last time, and so nothing has changed from when we had the presentation before.
Are there any questions for Chancellor George? Congratulations on raising the $1 million
Thank you.
for renovation. I know that isn't easy. All right, seeing as there are no questions for Chancellor George, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to recommend to approve the further planning and development of the University of Missouri St. Louis projects presented today and is outlined in the board materials?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion's carried. And who do we have next at bat?
I wish I could be as brief as the other two, but I'll try. We have a few things that we're going to mention today. One is you've seen a couple of these. Ellis Library, what we need to do with the library depository edition. And then also you've seen the new journalism building. So I'll just very briefly go over the others, explain what they are, and then see if there's any questions. Ellis Library, we need to build a depository separate so that then we're ready to renovate that space and build it into new, what we call a student experience center. We've talked about this before, so I won't spend time on it. There are a couple important projects that we need to do on the campus in terms of building capacity. One is a cooling capacity addition, and the other is a boiler plant satellite, which will allow us to provide the power and also the cooling that's going to be needed eventually when we expand also to TPM See and other things. This is just a critical infrastructure need for the campus that we will be doing. VetMed is in need of an upgrade in their diagnostic laboratory, and this is one we have not brought to you before, but we wanted to bring. This is something that is critical to the state. It's used by lots of veterinarians. We need a space that we can put in the types of facilities that then serve the whole state. This is, again, a new project that we're bringing to you just preliminarily, and we will continue to work on as we move forward. There's some additional work that needs to be done with the VetMed facility in general, and this will actually address some of those needs. And you'll see that as a $12 million addressing an issue there. We did talk about the journalism building before. It is going to allow us to address some FCN issues with Neff Hall and also allow us to add on to the facility and bring some other, consolidate some activities that are now throughout different locations, not only on MU campus, but even off MU campus, all of that coming together. But we talked about these things, bringing together a multi-platform newsroom and a welcome center all together in one facility. The new one that we're bringing to you is looking at an honors college. One of the reasons that we are looking at this is if you were to look at the recent U.S. News and World Reports, this is part of that justification, is that part of the ranking is, of course, how you increase your retention and graduation rates. We also have an increase in the amount of scholarships that we want to raise, the $25 million where we're looking for a match. We believe that part of that and being able to recruit those students that we want to recruit on that higher end will require that we need a space that will attract them to the university. If you look at our competitors, Arkansas has built one recently. Iowa has a very nice one. All of those campuses around us have honors colleges that have buildings separately. This is one that we're thinking about, and we are in the process of evaluating and then, of course, thinking about the capacity of us to raise funding for such a facility. Again, just an introduction to the concept for you, and we can talk about that in detail. We're also thinking about a center for student health and well-being. We have a medical center now that's near the hospital that holds our student health center. Part of building a center for student health and well-being is to move that part more central to the university, combine a number of different things that we have in terms of counseling services, make it more easily accessible by our students, and at the same time freeing up that space that could then be used either with the medical school or with the hospital. So there's a real benefit to us thinking this way. This is thinking long-term. The current Student Healthcare Center is near the site of the TPM See, and there's an opportunity for us to think about what might be possible if we move that to expand then some of the clinical operations. That's why we wanted to bring this to your attention in advance. The last one that I'm going to talk about is Manor House, which happens to be our last dorm, the only dorm we have that has not undergone significant renovations recently and is in need of significant renovations, and you'll see the project cost and, of course, the FCN that is addressed through this project. More importantly, what we're interested in here is through the process of the TPM See and working with thinking about P3 opportunities, we are interested in considering this project as a public-private partnership as we go forward. But we want to look at that as an opportunity, and we wanted to bring it to you for your attention at this time. As we continue to increase our undergraduate students and attract increase our freshman class, and also as we drive up our retention and graduation rates, one of our strategies is to increase the number of people who are living on campus, because we know that actually helps with their retention and graduation rates, and we want to have the spaces that they want to be living in. That's why we're thinking about also then upgrading this facility. So that was as fast as I think I could go with new projects. Now I have a question. Okay, no.
Well,
Yes, sir.
I think the medical diagnostic lab improvements, I think, are very important. Just a quick story about that. When I was at the Department of Ag, we've had all the dicamba-related issues here in the state. And as we did our investigations and diagnosis of some of the victims of that, I found out we were sending our samples to Iowa, University of Iowa, to have them diagnosed. Tremendously disappointing, so I started setting up meetings with the folks at the diagnostic lab, and I think we had a contract from our Department of Ag with another state for, I think it was probably $2 million, something like that they were making on these diagnoses. We had repeated conversations about the status of our lab, because we just didn't have the capacity to do it. We needed a lot of upgrades.
Right.
I did a couple of tours there, so I'm glad we're making that investment, because they can also generate money there.
Correct. And Dean Henry has been meticulous in thinking about the business plan for how this would actually work. What are the opportunities for working external to the university? This isn't just a research lab that's for our faculty. It is a research lab that's for the whole state.
That's right.
I
Yes,
had a
very
question on the Honors College, and I think the last slide, what was the last slide?
Manor House.
Manor House. Are those to be additional, like dorms or student?
Oh, I
thing?
should, thank you for the question. I should have been clear on that. The Honors College, we're not thinking of that as being residential space. That's actually a physical space that will include things like innovation spaces where we expand on the student experience. How do you encourage entrepreneurship? How do you connect all the activities that's happened with our different scholars, the Churn scholars, the STAMP scholars, and bring them all together in one location where they have shared space that they could really explore some new things. So this is not dorms. This is actual physical space you could even envision maker spaces and other things that allow us to expand what we're doing with our students. So thank you, and I should have said that. I apologize. You had another question.
Well, that
Oh, and
was
Manor.
an expensive one. I was just curious what I don't have a firm understanding of what $50 million will buy. But is that like a,
It's roughly a 50,000, 60,000 square foot building, roughly.
with like classrooms then, or?
There are possibility of some classrooms in there specifically related to some of the work that's going on in the Honors College and some of the spaces for the Honors College. So yes, all of those.
You have to forgive me, I wasn't in the Honors College, so
So,
clearly.
yeah, sorry, no, neither was I. But yes, it's the idea that we create spaces that have classrooms that are needed. There'll also be, like I said, laboratories that could be used for innovation. And we could also even include other centers in there, the idea being that we want to bring together some of our we have a number of centers at the institution that really attract a number of incredible students. For example, the Kinder Institute for Constitutional Democracy. All of these are opportunities that we could consider being in such a facility. That allows us then to free up other space that could be used for different things. But we bring all of those students together because they tend to, that set of students tend to interact a lot together, and there's some overlap there. So if we can create the spaces that then that allow us to even attract more of those students, that would be the best. And there'll be faculty there and others there that are support staff that will be helping with that. And this is preliminary, and we need to refine what this would look like.
Yeah, what we would bring back, I think we can take feedback like this, and when we bring it back in
Yeah,
the spring,
we'll
make
have it.
sure we have a more refined
But
plan.
it's a great question. I apologize for not mentioning earlier. Curator Phillips.
So you've essentially floated 4 new concepts for either additions or new construction, and let's assume they're all important. In terms of timing and urgency, how would you, what would you say would be the most important to put on the schedule? Because we now look at things, I think, 5 years out, don't we? So in terms of your timing for what you might bring forward as a actual proposition, which do you think might be first?
These would be first, the capacity in terms of cooling and boiler plant. We have to do those relatively quickly because we need to be preparing for when we're building the TPM See. So
And that would be within 5 years.
that would be within 5 years.
So that might actually have a priority ahead of some of your other
Yes.
4- or 5th-year plans?
Yes, this has to, for us to be able to do it.
Thanks.
The others, VetMed is of course a high priority, but we still have a lot of work to do there in terms of figuring out exactly how that would be. So the others are sort of similar priorities, what I would say.
And of course, VetMed, we've heard, fits in very nicely with the TPM See.
Correct. So you'll notice, and actually, thank you, Curator Phillips. I was trying to rush through this, and I didn't mention a couple other things I should have mentioned. One is, this does fit with what we're trying to do with the TPM See. These two fit with what we're trying to do with the TPM See. And the idea of moving student health to a new center for student health and well-being fits within the vision of what we want to do with the TPM See and the hospitals and the medical school in that whole area. So a lot of this is built around, we're going to be building a facility down there. We need to be thinking about how do we really maximize its impact by having additional spaces close to it, being focused on the things that we would be doing in the TPM See. Yes, thank you. That's an important point. That's why 4 of those actually projects are related.
Are there any other questions for Chancellor Cartwright?
Thank you.
All right, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to recommend to approve the further planning and development of the University of Missouri-Columbia projects presented today and as outlined in the board materials?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carried. I believe we have one final presentation with Chancellor Agrawal.
So I've got 5 pieces here. I think you have seen 3 of them several times before. The Conservatory, as you know, we are making good progress toward that. We'll decide on the site within, I think, 6 to 8 weeks, after which we'll need to proceed with putting the funding together for this and see what kind of support we have from the state as well as from the local community. The Spencer Chemistry and Biological Sciences renovation, we have done half of it. Phase 1 was funded, and that you can see in the top right what it looks like, and on the left you see what these things look like. Honestly, when I walked into this facility, I was sure I had walked into a black and white movie from the 1940s or 50s. This is a very, very old facility. So that really needs to be modernized, because I'm sure most high schools offer students better facilities than what we have right now. The Hospital Hill needs renovations as well as new facilities. The medical school building there was built in the early 70s, and we have been written up by the accreditation agencies that we need to improve. So we can do this in phases, a building that can be shared between the dental school, which has needs, as well as the medical school. So we're trying to bring those two together to look for common features where they can work together, as well as a research building that can go with it to fully capitalize on our situation or our location there on Hospital Hill to work with the partners. And I think that has been on the list before. Block Heritage Hall renovation. In addition, this is new. This is existing building is 1909 and added on 1987, but it's getting very dated. We have outside funders for this who have asked us to, they will fund part of it and we'll have to raise the rest of the money. But it includes more classroom spaces, updating the classrooms that exist, and some additional student support spaces. So it will add about 8,500 square foot additional, but renovate the other spaces which are getting very dated. And lastly, as I mentioned yesterday, new student housing. Even if we look at the growth we want to have of 24,000 students, and even if we correct for online student, we'll still need something like 2,500 to 3,000 beds. So that's including undergraduates and graduates, somewhere in that. And right now we're down to less than 1,000 on the Volcker campus, and about 250 or so on Hospital Hill. We have one facility, as you know, that's down, and so we're renting spaces and bits and pieces around to make up for it. But every time we rent some space, there's always a waiting line, and so there's already a pent-up demand. So if you get this in line, this won't happen tomorrow, but we'll eventually need these spaces. This most probably will be some kind of a public-private partnership. We don't know exactly where it will be, but we would like to start working on this. So I'll make it short. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Were you going to ask a question? No. So I should know this because I live here, but so what is happening to the Oak Street apartments? Are they going to be torn down? Are they going to be renovated? And would this be in addition to that if it is being renovated?
Yes, Curator Phillips, it will be in addition. Let me tell you what's happening with Oak Place right now. It's being negotiated, that's all I can say at best, between the insurance companies and all the people that are involved to see how much money we can recover. And we have not been able to get to a point where we can know for sure how much money we can recover. Then we'll have to make the decision based on that, whether we can rehab the place or it makes more sense to build again. So that's still up in the air. We are hoping that within a few weeks we'll get to the point of knowing how much money will be available to us.
So of the projects that you've talked about, and two new ones. I guess the housing project is new. That hasn't been talked about.
Correct. And the block.
The block. That's a renovation.
It's a renovation with a little bit of addition, but we have a lot of the funding in place already.
So I want to ask a question when David can listen to this, because this will be important for him. So to the extent that you have private funding available, does that make a difference on your prioritization of building?
Yes, we would like that one to go through because that private funding won't wait for us to, for long term. So the block building piece, we would like to get going on that as soon as possible.
Kind of like the Conservatory. If we don't do it, it may go elsewhere.
Conservatory, I think if we don't do it, the funding most probably will fall apart. I think there's still enough enthusiasm in the community from last year that we can build on that and bring it back together. But I think if we wait a long time, it's going to be very difficult to put it together.
Are there any other projects that you've mentioned today that have the likelihood of private funding? Conservatory?
Conservatory and the block, definitely. The student housing, public-private partnership, so there will be some kind of outside contributions to that. The other pieces get to be a little difficult. On the Spencer building renovation, the first half, there was a segment of that was private, because we had run short on that, and so the individuals stepped in to cover that. But it's a little more difficult to get private funding for that kind of renovation.
So not for today, but at some point, I guess I'd like to, we have another meeting while I'm still on the board. I'd like to have some board discussion and the opinion of the president and the curators about the extent to which private funding will impact on your prioritization and that of other curators, because we didn't cover it today, and I think the board ought to be interested in that. But I'll quit for today. Thank you.
Dr. Agrawal, can you go to the health sciences $150 million project? Okay, Interprofessional Education Research Building. Is there some overlap with this project and the TPMC? I know we've talked a lot about collaboration. Does bringing the TPMC online and UMKC's potential collaboration with Mizzou, does this downscale this project, or is there not enough overlap there?
I don't think there will be overlap. We'll definitely put things in here that will complement TPMC, but we were never really intending to build anything there that TPMC is going to build. A TPMC of anything of this, the size of TPMC will require a different kind of commitment, and we don't intend to do that here. But we will build things that are of interest here, like the Data Science Institute, and then bringing again the collaborations between St. Luke's, Children's Mercy, that are all around us, and Truman. And we don't have the research facilities on the research side to give to our faculty to really collaborate with those groups. But also the teaching facilities are majorly outdated. We need some simulation labs, teaching spaces that are much more modern.
May I ask
But again, if I may.
Can I follow up with asking a question a little differently?
Sure.
So how old is the med school?
1960s. 1971, I think.
How old is the dental school?
That I don't know, that building. I don't.
If you had facilities that combined some of those health sciences, would it increase your ability to attract faculty that would generate research that they could collaborate with at the TPMC?
Definitely.
That's a leading question.
No, that is, no, definitely. So the TPMC, as President Moon has made it very clear, we are all going to look at everything that we do to see how we can support that. And so some of the things that I've talked about in terms of the research pieces that we're going to build are complementary to TPMC, and we're thinking in that direction of how do we build pieces that complement TPMC. Now, not everything will complement TPMC, because there will be some other areas of research that will work closer with St. Luke's as well as Children's Mercy in terms of research.
All right, if there are no further questions for Chancellor Agrawal, may I have a motion and a second from the Finance Committee to approve the further planning and development of the University of Missouri Kansas City projects presented today and as outlined in the board materials provided to you?
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion's carried. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the Finance Committee business for this meeting. May I have a motion and second from the committee to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting?
So moved. Second.
Thank you.
I am in awe, Curator Bernsick, just in awe. We have an important meeting. Can I adjourn the public session now? You can now. Okay. Can I have a motion and a second to adjourn the public session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? The public session is adjourned. We have a important executive session. At least Curator Lehman, for example, has to leave. Curator Bernsick has a plane, so I hope we can go where we're going. Grab your food and let's go.